Here's what I learned. You don't get these seconds back. I spent a lot of time being angry with my grandfather, and I squandered a lot of time that I could have been spending learning about my grandfather, learning about my family, and he would have been the holder of that information. And I didn't use any of that time nearly as I could have. I just let it go and decided that I would be angry during that time. I didn't even process one day you're going to lose your grandfather. One day this man won't be here. Doesn't matter how he was, doesn't matter all the things that you went through, all that business. One day that man will be gone. I didn't put emphasis on how important the relationship with my grandfather was. And that man taught me a lot. I had some rough times with him for sure, but that man taught me a lot. So the first thing I want to tell you is you don't get these seconds back. Not one of them. The next thing that I learned is that the relationship that I had with my grandfather was extremely important. I think that because the relationship was such a hard one, or at least in my mind, I just retained it as this hard relationship. I didn't see the value that that relationship truly was in my life because I didn't really grow up with solid male role models around me. I had to do a lot of learning on my own. I had to bump my head a lot. There were people along the way for sure, but my grandfather was, as I think back, he was the most consistent. He was the most consistent male role model that I had, and I didn't even value that relationship. And then all the way to that man's deathbed, I didn't really value that relationship till after that man passed. Value the relationships that you have now. Value the relationships that you have now. You're not going to get them back. That's not how time works. Regardless of how hard my grandfather was on my mom, regardless of how hard he was on me, as a man, he took care of what he was supposed to take care of for sure, and very well. So far, such that I actually own the house in Talladega. He left that house to me. And toward the end of his life, he started having conversations with me to let me know that he was going to leave me that house. But that's the only thing he told me. He didn't tell me about anything else. He actually ended up leaving me that house, 3.5 acres of land that that it sits on, and all the cars, all the vehicles that he has. Because of him, I was able to put my mom in a house. It wasn't because of me. It wasn't like I went out and bought a house. That house is fully paid for. I pay for the insurance on it, and I pay for the taxes. My mom's able to live on property unbothered, go out there. She can do whatever she wants. She could plant flowers. She can grow whatever she want to do. She could live freely. And my grandfather put that in motion, and I didn't even know it. Didn't even know it. Didn't have the foresight to understand what this man was truly doing for me, for my mom, for our family. That's extremely important. It's far bigger than any disagreement that we ever had. It's far bigger than the so-called anger that I wanted to carry on my shoulders and interrupt our relationship with. You understand? That's exactly what we hope that black families are able to do, is pass down some kind of legacy to the next generation so that they have an opportunity to strive and achieve higher than the previous generation. And that man did that. He did that. And now I own 2 properties, and one of them is because of him. Yeah. Something else that I learned looking back on all of this, and I realized this a few years ago too. That man told me, he really did teach me how to hustle. He he instilled that in me, and it only took that summer for real. Because what happened is after that summer, I go back home, and I remember asking. I had a big thing. I used to skate. I was a skater. I started out on quads. That's four wheel regular roller skates you see, and then I eventually went over to inline skates. I mean, that was my thing. I loved skating. So when I went home, I remember there was a point where I asked my mom for a pair of skates. She couldn't afford it. She said, "Sorry, baby, I can't afford those." I said, "Okay, say no more." So, what I did, all that information that my grandfather taught me, rolling around in my little young cranium, I went out. I was getting allowance. I saved up my little allowance. I bought a dolly. I bought industrial trash bags. I bought a whole bunch of rakes, and then I got some of my friends in the neighborhood, put them to work, paid them a wage, and went around to the houses and apartments in the neighborhood so I could go and see if they would let us rake their lawns. And I got customers, and I was making money that way. And sure enough, I went out there, made that little business the same way he told me how to hustle, going door to door, getting business and making it happen. I had customers, and I was bringing in dough, so much so back then. Back then, you could get whenever you ordered products, you still had an opportunity to get COD. That's cash on delivery, so you could pay on the back end. So I would accumulate my cash, and when I could order COD, I have trucks delivering skates all the time. My mom wouldn't even know a UPS truck was about to show up, and they'll come knock on the door, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that's for me. That's those skates I ordered." I would get these orders, I was doing this. I did this like 8 times. Now there's a certain point where I went and got, an official job with tax and W-2s, all that. But the first 3 pair of skates out of the 8 total over the course of time that I purchased those all myself. The first pair was around like $172. Next pair was around about 240 something. And the third pair that I bought off the money that I was earning, because I did that business, but then I started other little businesses too. And then I was doing car washing, and then I was hustling at school too. I was down to my last little pieces of gum, and a whole bunch of kids kept clamoring trying to get it from me. So I sold a few pieces at, I think, 10 cent. I sold a few of them at 10 cent, and I got down to a smaller quantity of them, supply and demand. Got down to a smaller quantity, and they coming to me like crackheads for this little gum. Mind you, this is Dollar Tree gum. Well, I know it's a dollar and a quarter tree now, but this was Dollar Tree. This was Dollar Tree gum. So this gum cheap, lose its flavor, and this was 101 pieces in the pack. Back when this wasn't like the quality of Bazooka Joe, if you old enough to understand, remember the Bazooka Joe with the little comic on it. It wasn't like Bazooka Joe. It was cheaper than that. But you a kid in school. You want this. It's like crack for kids at school. So I'm like, okay, I'm seeing the issue of supply and demand. So I upped the price to 25 cents a piece, and they paid it. I ended that day. I think I ended that day with like $5.75 or something like that. I took that home, and when I showed my mom, I was like, "Yeah, I got this money from selling gum at school." So she let me go to the dollar store again. I went and leveled up. So what I do, took the money, reinvested in the business, went and got bulk product, and I went and served it to the fiends. That's what I did. Like I went, I was slanging bubble gum all around the school. And then there was a point where I got pushed out the market because somebody else started selling. They started selling blow pops, but it wasn't no regular blow pop. It was them the blue ones. They had ones that had like a blue wrapper on it. Those like the special ones, and they started selling those, and that pushed me out the bubble gum market. But then I just shifted what I sold. I started selling people. Back then we used to like tattoos. You could get these little water tattoos and put them on yourself, and then just put it on your skin and stay on there for a day or a few. And we love those. So I take those, get because whenever you go buy them, you get sheets of them. So I take it, get the sheets, cut them all up, and then I'll sell them one by one. Sell you a Lucy tattoo. And then after the tattoos went, the market of the tattoos fell off. I started selling hologram stickers. I'll go buy them for 75 cents, and I sell them for $1.50. So I learned all that from him. He taught me how to innovate. He taught me how to see supply and demand and then achieve an opportunity in the market. I didn't even realize it until I was an adult. That man put that root of that in me. And I appreciate him for that. I appreciate him for that. Man. The piece on the skates, sorry about that. To close out the skates. Okay, so 175-ish, first pair that I purchased myself. Then the next pair I purchased myself off those businesses around about 240 something. The next pair was around 370 something. The next pair, 4 something. Next pair, $720. Next pair, round about the same price. Next pair, like $1,000 some. All that. And the root of that from that man, Henry Sipe Easley. Boy, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I learned that my view of him as a child, as a 12-year-old child, and the imprint that that made on my mind was what I walked into my adult life with and kept that imprint. And I never allowed for that imprint to change. Mind you, I'm a 12-year-old kid. What 12-year-old kid do you know that understands things as a grown man? As a grown man. And I'm talking about different stages of being a grown man as well. Because you got the point where you turn 18 and then you smelling yourself. You know what I'm saying? You finally get some so-called freedom. You know, you're unattached from the parents to some degree. You feel that they can't tell you as much. So you start smelling yourself. Then you turn, let's say, 25. 25 is different. You feeling like an adult now. You feeling like an adult. You ain't got it figured out though. But you feeling like it. Now you break into 30. That's a whole nother thing. And you coming into your own. You know, you getting a handle on things. You know how to resolve problems. You know how to rebound from hard hits. You know how to create things, make things happen. You reaching for stability, you know. Then you turn 35. Now you're on your way to 40. You know, like this is, the perspective is far, far different. And I did not have that as a 12-year-old kid, but that's the imprint that I walked into the rest of my life with. That will clog your ability to realize the value in the relationships that you have. And also you need that perspective, so that you need to change in that perspective so you can step back and recalibrate and reevaluate the relationship, wash some of that history, and then allow for a new relationship to be built. Similarly to a relationship that you have, if you're with a woman. If you're with a woman for an extended period of time, that relationship is not going to be the same as day one. It just isn't. You're going to continue to change and evolve, and you have to have room for that to happen. And you have to have room for that to happen in every relationship that you have, especially with the people who are closest to you, who hold your history, your elders. You got to have that grace for them too. These were people before you were born. These were people before the concept of you existed. That's something that you have to get in your mind, because I had to do this same thing with my father. You don't understand that these people already had a whole bunch of failures. They had a whole bunch of successes. They had a whole bunch of their own imprints. They working through their own issues. They are not superheroes. They are just humans, and you happen to be related to them. You happen to be related to them. You don't pick your family. So you got to have some kind of grace for these people, because you come down in the line, you come down into the line of that family tree, and to you, you end up kind of the center of the world. To you, your world is the eyeballs that you see out of. But a lot of the time, unless you step back and unless you take that time, you don't provide this level of grace to people and allow them to be humans in front of you, so that you can actually establish a true relationship with them. If you don't, you probably don't have a real relationship with those people in the truest sense of that form. You know, it's far beyond just people saying things that are nice, making you feel good, or taking care of you just because you're family. No, it's far deeper than that. You need solid people around you. And if you build your friends and the friends and acquaintances in that fashion, then you've got to also give that type of grace and build real relationships with those people in your family. And that's something that, growing older and being introspective and having my own experiences, my own shortcomings, taught me to step back and reevaluate the relationships that I had with my grandfather and other people in my family. Because I'm looking at it, I mean, even with my mother, I'm thinking like, wow, this was an entire lady before I came along. She had me when she was 26. So If she has me whenever she's 26, what happened with them 26 years before that? You got to ask yourself that and then step back, reevaluate, and then reapproach these relationships so that you can actually establish a deep, deep bond and understand who these people are. Try to excavate their history because we don't get that kind of griot storytelling. They don't sit back and just offer up a lot of that information. And a lot of them, to be completely honest with this, they have a lot of trauma in their relationship. I mean, in their histories. They don't, these people, if they your elders, if you my age, I'm 39, if you my age, these people done went through a whole lot of history. They saw a whole different world than you. This man, all of this stuff he managed to achieve, all of this that he managed to even translate over to me, even whenever he was translating the information he should have gave me 3 years ago. He got that up out of a real turbulent era, extremely turbulent era. My era was much more smooth than his. I came in. I'm at the cusp of before internet and after internet. Now, I mean, I'm back where we really had the true floppy disk. You put it in the computer, and then the screen is black and all the letters is green. Oregon Trail days. You understand me? You know what I'm saying? You go across that bridge, and you're not the same group after you cross that bridge. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So you have to be able to give that grace to these people, man, because just looking back on how that man came out of that era and was as successful as he was, steadfast down to the day that he died, he was able to take care of himself. And maybe he didn't have the most finances in the world, but even on the last stages of his life, in stage 4, he had nurses, he had health care, he had some degree of ability to take care of the things that you need to take care of at that age. And that's one of the really important things for us as people that are like, I'm a middle-aged millennial at this point, and for people younger than me coming up and people my age and a little bit older, we have to be focused on covering that gap between whenever we stop being as productive as possible to the end of our days. That distance has to be covered by something. And that something is by resources and finances, man. It's no way around that. That's extremely important. And that man held that down. He held that down 100%. Also, he stayed married. That man stayed married. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of the friction in his relationships. I'm sure there was ups and downs. Don't no relationship make it that far without issues. But my biological grandmother, he was married to while he was in the military. So he's in the military, marries my mom's mother. He's with her till the day that she dies. Then he marries my grandmother that I know physically, Listine, and then he's with her till the day that she passes, and then he passes. That's pretty much his whole adult relationships. That's extremely powerful, man. That's extremely powerful. Shoot, I wish I could say the same thing. I went to college. I studied economics with a minor in business. I've been in corporate America for over 13 years at this point. I'm nice and educated, extremely swift and analytical, all of those things, but I don't have that piece figured out, and I've made poor decisions as well. It seems a lot of the times today, I hear a lot of people talking about education this and education that, but it's something further than education that it takes for you to hold together a family structure and move it all the way to the end of, make it all the way to that end goal. It's something to be said for that. And it's past just degrees. You know what I'm saying? Kanye West told you I got all these degrees, they're gonna keep me warm. Fam, it's past the degrees. It's so much more than that. And that man had it. So to close things out here, listen, nurture your relationships. Nurture your relationships. Ask your people questions. Ask them all the questions you need to ask them right now, because I have already experienced the hard way having questions that you cannot get answered. You cannot get answers. The people who hold the key to those questions are gone. And time only goes in one direction. You cannot go back and be like, oh, yeah, well, I squandered some of that time. Let me get a little bit of that time back. No, it's over. The time is gone, man. Nurture the relationships. Ask your people these questions. Find out who your family is. Find out who you are. Find out who you are. Those are the people that can tell you. Be mindful of the time you do have, and be more mindful of the time that you don't have. Use it. Use it. And the last thing I'll say, man, is just forgive people. You're going to have to forgive these people. You're going to have to get whatever anger and whatever pent up frustrations and whatnot, you got to get that up off yourself. If you need to go to therapy, if you need to meditate, you need to work out, you need to do all three, you need to drink some holy water, whatever it is in the world that you need to do to get yourself tight, man, you need to do that. And you got to build them relationships with them people, and you got to forgive them. You got to get past that, because when they're gone, they're gone. Learn about them. Learn about you. And level that thing up, man. Blessings.